Cholleros, good morning. I want to give a little update here first. Let's take a look at this. 16.61 pesos to $1. I think a lot of people remember when this exchange rate was closer to 20 to 1. So that's a couple points I want to go over with that. This market is priced in the US dollar, but the average American, Canadian just doesn't realize too that everything else is the peso, right? So construction, paying your crews, materials, paying for licensing, all this stuff is done in the peso. So if we had 20 to 1, and there's some pre-construction projects that started and they underwrote all their assumptions at 20 to 1. So if you're 20 to 1, and then it drops below 17 to, let's say, 16 and a half right now, that's basically like a 25% haircut. So if you gave them $400,000 for a condo, it's really like now today you've given them more like $310,000 for a condo. When I tell it to you like that, you can see how that can get very risky. Especially in a rising market where everybody's trying to keep up, and Cabo is the market to get into, and we're gonna do this project, we're gonna do that project, we're gonna compete on this. You got more competition. So remember, not all pre-construction is created equal. That is a huge thing that's happening right now. And it's also, people are like, oh, prices are rising. Well, they are rising because it's a US dollar denominated market, right? In order to get $400,000 now, they might have to charge $450,000, $470,000, right? To get that same 400 that you'd be paying just based off the exchange rate. So that's a serious thing. I had a call with somebody in Vallarta, and this was a guy, he's actually from Charleston, South Carolina, and he was building in Vallarta, and the dollar, you know, he's paying kind of every couple of weeks for the construction of his house over a year, and it just happened to be in a market where the peso was falling to the dollar, making it more expensive. His build ended up being $150,000 more than it should have been. And this was nobody's fault. It wasn't like the contractor screwed him over or this went up. Everything was budgeted for. It was just, he was paying in dollars and costs kept rising up. So he had a little company that he was trying to explain to me, which is good. He also told me that in Vallarta, a lot of these developers are now pricing these projects in the peso and then passing that quote unquote currency risk over to the buyer. Now here's the thing though too, a lot of people try to play currencies and whatnot. I don't. Currencies go both ways. So now that it's at 16 and a half, you know, if you made me guess, I'd say probably, everybody said it was gonna jump back up to 20, but maybe it gets more favorable over time, right? So who knows from the American perspective, paying with dollars, right? So I did a video on Azula, and I just wanna read this. Azula was a higher end project by Currency in the East Cape. This is their memo. Unfortunately, over the past 12 months, we have seen both construction and labor costs increase throughout the Baja, as well as the negative impact of the dollar to peso ratio. For these reasons, our costs have increased and housing prices for consumers has increased to levels which we believe are not ideal for the East Cape market. As developers, this changes everything. Our median home price at an entry level and up must be commensurate with the market, and unfortunately at present it is not. It is for this reason that moving forward the Azula project is indefinitely suspended. Now here you have what I would call a very solid American style builder here that's saying we can't execute. What I will say is that there's a lot of projects going on where, due to ego, they're not gonna say that because their project's better than the next guy's project. So you have to be very careful You have to be very careful with that. And there's really not too much to know other than working with somebody that knows the lay of the land here and be able to vet. Obviously, buying something built out is something else entirely. That's different, right? But you know, that price has also gone up. The cost to build is definitely not cheap right now, especially when you compare it to pre-pandemic. There is a project on the Pacific side. Here's back to currency risk. This project has lost $40 million due to the peso and dollar exchange rate. And if you think about that, that's huge. This is a high-end project that's going on in the Quivira area, and this is what I've heard, right? So if you just factor that out to the Tazal area, and let's just call that $2 to $3 million, that's still a huge hit, right? So it's an interesting market right now. You know, I talked to a lot of people, a lot of people at different companies, a lot of buyers. We had 4,000 listings on the MLS at one point, like pre-pandemic basically, right? That got down to 800, and we're talking about the entire Baja, all the way up to Loreto. This includes land, condos, houses, commercial. It's a smaller commercial market here. And right now we're at, as of 2 days ago, it was 2,038 properties. So let's call it 2,050 properties. I was speaking with another broker here, and I said, do you think, you know, let's call it the next 9 months, do you think we'll get up to, you know, maybe 2,800 properties on the MLS? And he said yes. He said, I said 2,700, he said at least that. So depending on what market you're in, right, there's all different niches, but we are definitely in a buyer's market right now. So depending on your product, you could even say areas like, yesterday they had an open house in Copala, and I think 11 units for sale. I just had a buyer buy a condo there. They got a really good deal, and it was condos side by side. So we were able to basically negotiate against each one of them and get a price that we want. So right now is a good time to be a buyer. You know, you've got areas like even Pedregal, Cabo where you just have a lot of properties that are for sale. So I think you can get really good deals depending on what's going on, but I would also say just be cautious with pre-construction. Only go from solid builders. Due to the peso and dollar, basically, hey, buy pre-construction if you can get a 25% gain, right? If you think, and that's being conservative, right? I'm always conservative. Can you get that gain? Well, if you're already losing that just to the peso and dollar conversion rate, is it really worth the risk to be buying ground up? It depends, right? How far along is the project sold out? Like what type of value, what type of views? Is it in a golf course community? Things like that. So that's what's going on with the dollar to the peso. You know, vet your developers, but it's a phenomenon that a lot of people thought was going to just be temporary. But here's another thing that's very scary. There are developers that are still underwriting projects at 20 to 1. And say, oh, it's gonna go back, it's gonna go back. And it's like, well, dude, the reality is that right now, today, the dollar to the peso is 16.61, okay? So why would you underwrite anything that's aggressive like that? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So work with proven developers, and if you're a buyer, right now is a very good time to be getting in. If you guys need any help, any ideas for other videos, just reach out to me. Happy to help. Have a good day, cholleros.